How's it going, everyone? Data here, and welcome to our first career simulation here on NHL 23. Starting off the new game with the hottest prospect in the NHL right now. I think it definitely mine, but probably everyone's Calder Trophy favorite at the moment, Matty Beniers, the Seattle Kraken centerman, who was drafted second overall back in 2021. Spent some time at the University of Michigan, but since he made the jump to the NHL, it has been seamless. He's been around a point per game pace this season already, once more on that point per game pace. He has been doing extremely well. He's turning heads, has such great two-way ability, playmaking ability, a great shot as well. I'm very excited to get into his career today on NHL 23, where he will begin as an 82 overall. The game has him as an 81. I bumped him up a little bit to 82, gave him some X factors to boot as well, but he will be the cornerstone of the newest franchise in the NHL, of course, with Shane Wright and other young pieces like Burakovsky, Bjorkstrand, McCann, Gourde. Maybe not the youngest of prospects, but a team that has been turning heads this season, doing very well at the moment in the weaker Pacific Division. But Matty Beniers will start off as a 19-year-old. Of course, in the real world, he's already 20 years of age, as he just turned 20 earlier November 5th. So the game will begin in October of 2022, just before he turns 20. He will be an 82 overall with those X factors that I gave him. Elite edges, quick pick, stick him up, tape to tape, and third eye. Of course, there's probably a lot of different X factors you could give him. He has a very strong all-around game. I thought those made sense for him. The game doesn't give him any. They start him as an 81. I've seen him like on the fourth line, so I thought giving him some X factors and a little overall boost would just ensure that he wouldn't be buried in the lineup when we get into the simulation. He starts with 87 offensive awareness, 87 deking, 85 defensive awareness, strong skating, his best category there at 4 stars. I'm sure he's going to develop extremely well. As always, a hands-off approach, salary cap turned on, injuries turned on, taking control of a random Eastern Conference team, and just letting the simulation do its job for the 20 whatever years that Matty Beniers has in the NHL. We'll see, does Matty Beniers become Mr. Seattle with a statue built for him outside of Climate Pledge Arena? Does he move on from Seattle in the later years? Maybe they don't have money for both Beniers and Wright, and they got to choose between the two of them. We'll see what kind of direction the AI GM takes and the career that Matty Beniers has, no matter where he plays, breaking franchise or maybe even NHL records along the way. If you haven't seen our career simulations already, there are a bunch we did back on NHL 22. Slavkovsky, Wright, Nemec, Cooley, so many prospects we've done already on NHL 22. So if you want to check out those simulations, be sure to check out the playlist that will be in the card and the end screens and all that stuff. And also here on the channel, if you enjoy career simulations, NHL franchise mode, or much more, take a second to check out the channel. Be sure to watch this one all the way through and leave your suggestions afterwards to let me know which player's career you want to see simulated next. Be sure to leave a like, as it's a very time-consuming process to make these videos. I love them, but they do take about a week of recording and editing to get done with the slow, sticky menus. And hey, without further ado, let's get year number 1 of Matty Beniers' NHL career started. So starting things off here in year number 1, the Kraken have Beniers playing on the top line with Shane Wright and Andre Burakovsky. Interesting choice to have him playing on the wing, but I'm glad he's just getting those first line minutes. I am using the most recent EA rosters. That's how I always do it for career simulations, so that there's as little bias from me and my personal rosters as possible. Of course, all the attributes that we already saw. He has 2 years left on his entry-level contract, as the first year was burned at the end of 2021-22, so we'll see if that comes back to bite the Kraken later on in terms of salary cap allocation. He'll be fighting for the Calder alongside his line mate Shane Wright, so we'll see how this line does and the Kraken do as a whole here in 2022-23. In Matty Beniers' rookie season, the Kraken slipped into the playoffs with the second to last spot in the Western Conference, as they finished 14th in the NHL with a record of 41, 31, and 10. Beniers finished 4th in team scoring, playing in all 82 games and scoring 22 goals and 33 assists for a 55-point rookie season, 6 power play points, and averaging under 19.5 minutes of ice time per night. Honestly, even though he didn't go point per game, still a pretty realistic season, as the Kraken made the postseason, and Shane Wright was even sent down to the AHL, or back to juniors, whatever it is here in EA land, after 9 games into the season, just as he's been bouncing between the NHL and the AHL in the real world. Those 55 points were also second best amongst NHL rookies, second only to Matias Maccelli on the Arizona Coyotes, who scored 4 more points than him. And in the postseason, how about this for a story as the Seattle Kraken capture the 2023 Stanley Cup? They take down the Avalanche in 5 in round number 1, and then 7-game series all the way to the end. Western Conference semifinal, they beat the Wild in 7. Western Conference final, they beat the Oilers in 7. Stanley Cup final, they beat the Devils in 7. What a crazy run as the Kraken win their first Stanley Cup in franchise history. In the postseason, Matty Beniers showed up and scored 8 goals and 11 assists for 19 points through 26 games. He was also averaging over 20 minutes of ice time per night, had a shorthanded goal, and after that Stanley Cup victory has grown to an 85 overall after year number 1. Amazing stuff. The defensive stuff like shot blocking, face-offs, they're going to keep coming over time, but 89 offensive awareness, 4.5-star skating, 4-star shooting, amazing stuff, and what a rookie year for Matty Beniers. No Calder Trophy as that went to Maccelli, and the Conn Smythe went to Yanni Gourde, but still a great year for Beniers, and heading into the final year of his ELC already, we'll see what he can do and what kind of contract the Kraken will be offering him. And of course, if it wasn't already obvious on such a young franchise, Matty Beniers set franchise single-season rookie records for most goals, assists, and points with the Kraken. Year number 2, Matty Beniers' official sophomore season. He is back with Shane Wright, who should be sticking in NHL this time around, as he is now an 85 overall. So is Matty Beniers, up to an 85, stuck with the 85 that he got by the end of last season. I don't think many of his attributes have changed from what we last saw. 90 acceleration, 90 speed, has great wheels, a really great shot, solid 87 passing. Looking forward to seeing what he does this season, the final year of his ELC, with a solid line and a pretty good team coming off of a Stanley Cup victory. In year number 2, it was a very odd Western Conference as the Kraken once again snuck into the playoffs with the second to last spot, finishing 19th in the league, barely above 500. Meanwhile, the Blackhawks in 20th were below 500 and they made it, while the 14th place Red Wings with 42 wins did not make it. So the Kraken once again sneak into the playoffs, this time with a record of 38, 35, and 9. Speaking of more odd things, it was a very weird season for Matty Beniers, a little sophomore slump. Once again playing in all 82 games, but only 14 goals and 31 assists for a 45-point season. He was a -9. Shane Wright had 42 points with a -27, so the younger player is not doing a great job, but he played over 21 minutes of ice time per night, so you would think that it should come with time. In the postseason, it was definitely a Stanley Cup hangover as the Seattle Kraken were the biggest losers of the 2024 postseason, losing to the Coyotes, who lost to the Avalanche, who lost to the Ducks, who lost to the Blue Jackets, who won the 2024 Cup. Through those 6 games in the postseason, Matty Beniers scored 1 goal and 2 assists for 3 points, all while averaging over close to 22.5 minutes of ice time per night. So he's definitely eating the minutes, and he's now up to an 87 overall, listed as a second-line forward. He should be on track to grow even more heading into year number 3, which will be the first non-entry-level contract year. So he's going to need a nice contract. Will the Kraken go bridge long-term? What kind of price tag will it be after 2 so-so seasons, but year number 2 not that great? Still has that 4.5-star puck skills, senses, skating. A great player who's only going to get better. So let's see what kind of contract gets hammered out in the 2024 offseason. Year number 3, and Matty Beniers is finally centering his own line. No longer a winger as he is centering the second line here in Seattle. Over the offseason, he signed a 4-year bridge contract, which will bring him to restricted free agency status. So the Kraken will still control his rights in 4 years' time, paying him $8.005 million per season. The extra $5,000, he's going to go buy himself something nice. In total, he'll get just over $32 million. At an 87 overall and listed as a second line forward with medium elite potential, the attributes are looking great, and hopefully centering his own line with Burakovsky on his left and Yanni Gourde on his right, he'll be able to kind of do his own thing. Yikes. In year number 3, the playoff luck ran out in a big way as the Seattle Kraken were the worst team in the NHL, technically tied with the Kings, but lower on regulation plus overtime wins. 72 points and a record of 32, 42, and 8. In his 3rd season, Matty Beniers tied his rookie season career high of 55 points as he scored 17 goals and 38 assists, a new career high in assists. through 79 games. So on pace to have a career season, leading the team in points, which is fantastic, but not really getting enough ice time as he was only averaging less than 19 minutes per night. So maybe if the Kraken had given him some more opportunities, it would have been a bit better, but a very difficult season offensively, as we can see. 55 enough to lead the team in points. After year number 3, Beniers is an 87 overall, still hanging on to the same attributes, I believe, for the most part. We now see that he has 5-star senses, which is great, but hopefully there will be more growth over the offseason, and the Kraken can pick up some more pieces so that a return to the postseason in year number 4 will be possible. At the draft, the Kraken dropped from 1 to 3 in the draft lottery, unfortunately, but they did get to draft a medium elite center power forward, 81 overall, who seems to be the best of the top 3 picks, so that went very well for them. Yeah, looks like it, so another big piece for the Kraken to have in their organization. Asher Burnett, a center with 5-star shooting, so we'll see what he can do with Beniers, Wright, and company. Year number 4, and Matty Beniers is back to playing wing on the top line here in Seattle. Now up to an 89 overall, playing on the left wing with Shane Wright at 90 at center and Oliver Bjorkstrand at 84 on the right. That new guy Burnett is in the top 6. The lineup as a whole is much better. 85 overall, Ryan Hartman is here. So I'm a bit more hopeful than a last place finish for this year. Beniers at an 89 overall is still listed as a second line forward, but we see that the 5-star senses and defense are there with the 4.5-star puck skills, skating, physical, and 4-star shooting. I'm hoping for a career season from Beniers with the minutes and with the attributes, and after coming off of a team-leading season last year. It wasn't pretty, but in year number 4, the Seattle Kraken returned to the postseason, once again squeaking in the weaker Western Conference, a 22nd place finish with a record of 37, 35, and 10 was good enough for the postseason, even though 14th place Buffalo with 42 wins didn't make it. A very nice season from Matty Beniers, who once again just missed a few games, playing 79 out of 82. He's currently injured heading into the postseason, so it was an end-of-year injury there. 21 goals and 46 assists for 67 points, a new career high by far, all while playing just over 20 minutes of ice time per night. And my sincerest apologies, in the postseason, I totally forgot to check out the playoff tree. I just kept on simulating in my mind. I guess I said Beniers was injured. I just kept going through it. But what happened was that the Kraken swept through round number 1 and then got swept out of round number 2. Out of those 8 games, Matty Beniers played 5 of them. I would assume missing the first 3 due to injury. And in those 5 games, he scored 2 assists and was a -2. Year number 5, and I'm liking this Kraken lineup. Matty Beniers at a 90 overall, listed as a first-line forward. 5-star puck skills, senses, and defense. Very, very nice to see this developing. 93 passing, 93 offensive awareness, 91 defensive awareness. Wright and Burakovsky on that first line with him. On the second line, you see McCann's at an 88, Hartman's at an 86. I love to see that. Defense, by the way, we haven't been looking at it too much, but just a quick look at that. And goaltending is Logan Thompson, if you were curious about the rest of the Kraken. But after a 67-point season, which was a new career high, let's see if Beniers can repeat that, hit some new numbers, and return the Kraken to the postseason once again. Luck ran out for the Kraken in year number 5, as although they finished with a record of 39, 34, and 9, and they had made the postseason previously with worse records than that, 21st place was not good enough to make the postseason in 2026-27. Matty Beniers, however, did have a career year, 17 goals and 54 assists for 71 points in 80 games, just getting better the last 3 seasons or so, all while averaging over 21.5 minutes of ice time per night. So the Kraken are learning that they got to give Matty Beniers the puck. A great playmaker as Shane Wright, the actual listed playmaker, had 31 goals. But all that to say, Matty Beniers through 5 seasons is still a 90 overall with first line forward role. 5 stars across the board aside from the 4.5 skating and physical and 4-star shooting, but every other aspect of his game coming along very nicely, headed into the final year of that 4-year extension he signed after his entry-level deal. Year number 6, and how about this for a lineup? Matty Beniers centering the Kraken's first line for the first time in his career with Shane Wright on his right, 90 overall, and Chris Kreider on his left at the age of 36, 81 overall. Speaking of older players, Sidney Crosby at the age of 40 on the second line with 87 overall Jared McCann and that prospect Asher Burnett. The bottom six, not too bad either. Jordan Staal at a 77 at the age of 39. What a team this is. Defense, there's Jake Bean. Yeah, 78 to 82 overalls. And goaltending is Brassois and Thompson. All right. So the top six is interesting. Matty Beniers on the final year of that 4-year extension that he signed. He'll be an RFA after this season, so we'll see what the Kraken do. He'll want to really perform so he can get his payday after this season. And centering the first line for the first time in his career with Sidney Crosby on the team as well. This could be a great season in Seattle. So year number 6 didn't end up being the greatest year for the Kraken, but they did win 40 games in a stronger NHL. That was unfortunately only good enough to put them in 24th in the league. So just some bad luck there with a record of 40, 37, and 5 to miss out on the postseason. Matty Beniers, once again, just a couple games shy from a full 82-game season, but through 80 games this year, he scored 23 goals, a new career high, and 48 assists for 71 points, tying his previous career high from last season. All the while, Sidney Crosby, at the age of 40 and 80 overall, puts up 80 points, so I found that crazy. But Matty Beniers, 71-point season, 23 goals, all while averaging over 21 minutes of ice time per night. And after missing out on the postseason once again, he does find himself as a 90 overall, headed into restricted free agency. Will the Kraken be able to find a deal for him? Will he be offer sheeted by another team perhaps? Will his rights be traded away? Will they be able to come to a deal? We'll see what happens, as his attributes have never been higher, and he'll be asking for a big payday. Headed into year number 7, Matty Beniers and the Kraken were able to hammer out a deal in the offseason. A 2-year contract paying him $9.875 million per season, a total of $19.75. This will leave him in UFA status in 2 years' time, so we'll see what happens in 2030. But for the moment, he is a 90 overall, listed as a first-line forward with that high elite potential. I believe it's gone up as of a few years ago. I forgot to mention it was medium elite, now he's high elite. So good to see that increase. Playing on the first line with Shane Wright and this prospect here, Topi Jaskalainen. The left wing is strong here in Seattle. McCann, Boquist, Duclair. Then you got Burnett, second line centerman. Barbashev's on the fourth line for some reason, but not as strong with a few 78s and 80s sprinkled in here. Same for the defense and goaltending. But Matty Beniers is a 5-star player. Fantastic attributes. Coming off of a career high in goals. Let's see what happens in year number 7. Another tough year in Seattle in year number 7 as the Kraken finished 29th in the NHL with a record of 33, 42, and 7. It was a decent season for Matty Beniers, not quite what you would expect after what he did the last few seasons, but 19 goals and 41 assists for 60 points in 78 games, all while averaging close to 21.5 minutes of ice time per night. So headed into the final year of that 2-year contract, and with little success with the Kraken since that Stanley Cup victory back in year number 1, I'll be curious to see what kind of deal Beniers and the Kraken may be able to come to. But after these 7 seasons, he's still 90 overall. I don't believe his attributes have changed, although his faceoffs continue to increase slowly. Very nice to see that. But the shooting has stagnated for a little while, and he needs some better line mates out there. All right, year number 8, and it is a make-it-or-break-it season as Matty Beniers is in the final year of his contract before he will hit unrestricted free agency for the first time in his career. He is an 89 overall, so he dropped 1 overall over the offseason, now listed as a second-line forward, 4.5-star puck skills, stuff like this that should grow back no problem with a solid season, and hopefully it should be a solid season because Shane Wright's a 91, Asher Burnett is a 90, it's the highest overall line he's ever been on. This guy César Dagenet was drafted second overall in last year's draft, 5-star shooting. McCann 87, Fiala 84, Barbashev 83, Slavin at an 85 now on defense, Nedeljkovic between the pipes. Hopefully this Kraken team will not miss the postseason for a 4th consecutive year, and Matty Beniers will have a bounce-back season. All right, year number 8, and the Kraken make it back to the postseason, although it was once again just sneaking in through the back door as the Kraken finished 17th in the NHL with a record of 43, 35, and 4 to be the final Western Conference team to make the dance. It was an odd season for Matty Beniers, though, as he once again didn't play in a full 82 games. It was actually only a 67-game season, the lowest of his career. And he scored 15 goals and 33 assists for 48 points, which would have put him on a 59-point pace, pretty much the same as he did last season. But this year, while averaging almost 22 minutes of ice time per night, just a second away. So the most ice time of his career, but on pace for a 59-point season, one of the lowest of his career. In the postseason, it was another early exit for the Kraken as they lost in 5 games to the Vancouver Canucks, who would go on to lose to the Avalanche in the Western Conference Final, who would go on to win the Stanley Cup. Beniers continued to struggle in the postseason as he played in all 5 games but only registered 2 assists. He was a -2, all while averaging over 22.5 minutes of ice time per night. So a really tough year number 8 for Beniers here in 2029-30. Headed into year number 9, the 2030 offseason, he is an 89 overall. His attributes haven't changed since the start of this past season. Still the 4.5 puck skills, everything else. We know that he can be a lot better, but headed into what will likely be unrestricted free agency, can he and the Kraken hammer out another deal, or will it be time for him to move on to other things after, yes, he has a Stanley Cup ring, but 3 other early playoff exits to show for the last 8 seasons? All right, year number 9, and let's run it back with that first line of Burnett, Wright, and Matty Beniers as he is signed back on, but only for a 1-year contract in Seattle. $8.735 million on a prove-it-to-me deal to see what happens. You know, I bet both the player and the team want this to work after a really tough season. Wasn't fully healthy. It was a rough playoffs as well. Let's hope that this is the season that we can actually say, all right, this Seattle team is serious. With Wright, Burnett, Dagenet, it should be a better season than the last one with that early first-round exit. Matty Beniers, 89 overall. Don't believe that any of his attributes have changed since the start of last season, the end of last season. 1-year contract. Let's hope for a fully healthy season. He hasn't had that since his sophomore year. Year number 9, let's hit it. More disappointment in Seattle as it's really the defense that's letting the Kraken down. Seattle finished 24th in the NHL in 2030-31 with a record of 39, 38, and 5, scoring a lot of goals but allowing way too many at over 3.5 per game on average. Beniers had a solid season, once again not a full 82 games, but 21 goals and 45 assists for 66 points through 80 games. We'll take that, all while averaging almost 20.5 minutes of ice time per night. After this 9th season with the Kraken, and perhaps his last, he is still an 89 overall with now the exact league potential, as it's no longer high at this age, but listed as a second-line forward. Attributes haven't really changed in a little while now, and I'll be curious to see what kind of deal he looks for in the offseason, and whether or not it'll be with the Kraken after they miss the postseason for the 4th time in the last 5 years. And big news for the Kraken in the offseason as they win the draft lottery and jump from 9th to 1st in the 2031 draft. And with the first overall pick, they go ahead and select an 84 overall medium elite sniper at 18 years of age, Chance Yashin. My goodness. So if Beniers sticks around in Seattle, what a great addition to the right wing. Year number 10 of Matty Beniers' career, and both he and the Kraken are convinced that they are a match, as over the 2031 offseason, there is a 7-year agreement that is struck, paying Matty Beniers $10.84 million per season, almost $76 million to keep him in Seattle for a long time. He likes what they're doing here. Burnett, Yashin, Dagenet, a nice top 6 core. He finds himself on the left wing of the second line as a 90 overall, headed into his 10th season. Listed as a first-line forward, still with the 4.5-star puck skills and the 4-star shooting, with everything else 5-star physical, 5-star senses. The defense is definitely there. Let's hope that this top 6 can get it done. Even this top 9 is very strong, so fingers crossed for the Kraken this season. Defense leaves a little bit to be desired, and goaltending isn't great. Nedeljkovic and Saros, both 35 and 36, I believe. But Matty Beniers, year number 1 of that big boy contract. He knows that he'll be here for a long time. Headed into his 10th season, let's see some magic. The Kraken have a strong year number 10 as they finish 13th best in the NHL with a record of 40, 29, and 13. Funny how some years 40 wins gets you in the 20s. This year 40 wins got you 13th. A stronger Western Conference this year, as was demonstrated by the Coyotes in 11th place, missing out on the postseason. But luckily, the Kraken are in for Beniers' 10th season. Beniers had his third 70-plus point campaign of his career as he finally played in all 82 games for the first time since year number 2, scoring 19 goals and 51 assists for 70 points. The new prospect Yashin, 43-goal season from him, so very nice. Beniers scoring 70 points, all while averaging over 21.5 minutes of ice time per night. So this is the type of year that we've been looking forward to seeing from him. I think that's what we should be consistently expecting when Matty Beniers is fully healthy. In the postseason, unfortunately, it was another early exit for the Kraken as they dropped in 5 games to the Sharks, who would go on to lose in the Western Conference Final to the Avalanche, who went on to win the Stanley Cup. The exact same story of what had happened versus the Canucks back in year number 8. Matty Beniers once again didn't really show up in the postseason as he played in all 5 games but only scored 3 assists. He has not scored a postseason goal since 2024, 8 years and 3 playoff berths later. Still no more goals to show. In those 5 games, he was averaging close to 22 minutes of ice time per night, and headed into year number 11, he's still maintaining his 90 overall status. The puck skills are starting to scare me a little bit. We know that they can get up to like 92, 94. It's been a bit odd to see that, but if he continues to have strong line mates and a good team around him, the Kraken should find their groove. Year number 11, and I'm loving this top line here in Seattle as Matty Beniers will play on the left wing with Shane Wright at center and Yashin on the right. That rookie who just came off of a 40-plus goal season, 97 shooting accuracies. That will be great with Beniers, who's been simulating as a playmaker, it seems like. After scoring 51 assists last season, we'll see what he can do as a 90 overall with 90 passing. This is a season where we can hopefully see some of those attributes go back to what we've seen them as. Coming off of a fully healthy 82-game 70-point season, but lots of disappointing postseasons. So let's see if we can turn that around in 2032-33. Back to the basement in year number 11 as the Kraken finished 24th in the NHL with a very strong first line. I don't know what happened, but they went 36, 39, and 7. Just a weird season. Matty Beniers, 55-point year. Yashin, 29 goals. I don't know. After he scored like 43 in his rookie season, it was the second line that really carried it, and Shane Wright had 67 points, but 15 goals, 40 assists, 55 points in 79 games for Beniers, all while averaging almost 22 minutes of ice time per night, leading the team in ice time by a forward. Crazy stuff, but in year number 11, it's once again a postseason miss for Beniers and the Kraken, who now at the age of 30 is still a 90 overall. Attributes aren't really changing much at this point. Very minuscule, like offensive awareness between 93 and 94 each year, but aside from that, not really changing. We're just waiting for that X factor or what. Maybe it will be the growth of the younger players, but hopefully year number 12 will be a better story. Year number 12, and Matty Beniers is back to centering his own line, back now on the second line as he has Kent Johnson on his left and Noel Gunler on his right. The top line looks amazing, so hopefully the offense can be spread around on the special teams and all that good stuff. This guy Raffl's been a great piece for the Kraken as well, a playmaker with 96 shooting accuracy. So Matty Beniers is part of a good team. It should have more than 2 first-round exits in the last, 7, 8 years now. So year number 12, Matty Beniers, 89 overall, centering the second line. Let's get those puck skills back up. Let's see some good stuff. Chemistry with Johnson and Gunler, special teams all coming together for hopefully another 70-plus point campaign. In year number 12, the Kraken make the postseason for the 3rd time in 5 years with an 11th place finish in the NHL with a record of 44, 31, and 7. Still not cracking the top 10 of the league, but good enough to make the postseason once again. In his second line role, Matty Beniers stayed healthy and played a full 82 games as he registered 17 goals and 50 assists for a 67-point season while being a -4 and averaging just a second shy of 19 minutes of ice time per night, the second lowest average ice time of his career. So one of his, better / average seasons in terms of point production, but really weird for the time on ice. So centering his own line was nice, but he did finish 5th in team scoring. In the postseason, it was another first-round exit for the Kraken. Thankfully, this time, silver lining was to the eventual Stanley Cup champion San Jose Sharks, and they brought them to 6 games, but disappointing to be out so early once again. Matty Beniers scored his first postseason goal in a decade, as through those 6 games, he scored a goal and 8 assists for 9 points, well above his usual for the postseason, all while averaging just over 19 minutes of ice time per night. So, bit of an increased role, perhaps a little bit. He was scoring pretty well, but maybe just still needed more ice time. And through 12 seasons, headed into 2034-35, he is 31 years of age, still at a 90 overall, back to being listed as a first-line forward. Attributes not really changing much in a pretty long time now. 94 offensive awareness. That seems to be the decider of his overall. If it's 93, he's an 89. If it's 94, he's a 90. But everything else, not really seeing any changes there. Headed into year number 13 now. After a good season on the second line, hopefully they can find a spot for him on the first line. Okay, year number 13, let's get excited. Matty Beniers is playing first line left wing with 92 overall Shane Wright and 88 overall Chance Yashin. I love it. The second line looks great as well. The top six, even the center depth is very nice. Matty Beniers at a 90 overall to start his 13th year in the NHL. Listed as a first line forward. All the attributes looking the same as the end of last season. 4 years left on his contract and has not seen outside of round number 1 since 2026. So with this first line, I'm really crossing my finger for big things, but the defense is atrocious and the goaltending is not convincing either. So a lot of money being put on the forwards, so hopefully the scoring can carry the team. Year 13 was another squeaker as the Kraken finished with 42 wins, but only good enough for 18th in the NHL, the second to last spot in the Western Conference. 42, 38, and 2 was their record. And finally, in a fully healthy 82-game season on that first line, Matty Beniers sets a new career high in points and assists. His previous high of 71 points had been held since year number 5 and 6. He scores 74 points, 17 goals, and 57 assists through 82 games. Still a -3, but hey, 18 power play points, averaging 21 minutes of ice time a night. Love to see that. But in the postseason, it was once again a first-round exit for the Kraken. Although this year they did push the Canucks to 7. The Canucks would go on to lose against the Sharks, who would go on to win the Stanley Cup. So the winner continues to come from the Pacific Division, or at least oftentimes from the Western Conference. But the Kraken do not make it out of round number 1 for the 4th consecutive time and the 4th time in the last 6 years. Beniers didn't do so hot either, as he was once again unable to score a goal, registering 3 assists in 7 games. He was a -2 through those 7 games, all while averaging about 19.5 minutes of ice time per night. So a great regular season, but another odd postseason for Matty Beniers, who at the age of 32 is an 89 overall, still with all the same attributes, and headed into year number 14. We will hope that the regular season success can translate to some postseason success. Year number 14 and Matty Beniers is back to centering the second line in Seattle with Kent Johnson on his left and Noel Gunler on his right. That first line is very scary, but hopefully there's enough offense to go around. Beniers has shown himself to be able to produce in a second line role, so hopefully he can do that. I hope that he'll get the right ice time as well. 89 overall at the age of 32, attributes unchanging as always, and 3 more years on his contract. So after a 74-point campaign last season, let's hope for more of the same, if not more, in 2035-36. In year number 14, 18th place was not good enough to make the postseason, as Seattle just can't stay consistent when it comes to making the playoffs. They went 38, 30, and 14 to finish in 18th. One of the silver linings for the Kraken this season is that Matty Beniers played his 3rd consecutive fully healthy 82-game season, the first time in his career that he does that, and another new career high in points by 1 point, 22 goals and 53 assists for a 75-point campaign. He was a +2, 23 power play points, all while only averaging 18.41 per night, his lowest average ice time in a full season in his career, coming in his 14th season. So, and he gets a career high in points. I don't know if he's not being utilized right. The defense in Seattle is atrocious. No one's higher than an 81 overall. The goaltending isn't great, so the forwards are there. The forwards are definitely there. 99-point season from Shane Wright. But Matty Beniers, after his 14th season, once again misses out on the postseason at the age of 33 at an 89 overall, with all of his attributes still the same. Year number 15, here we go. Matty Beniers centering the second line here in Seattle. The top line is scary. Dagenais, Wright, and Yashin. Kent Johnson on the right and Omar Raffle on the left of Matty Beniers. Remember, this guy's a playmaker, but 5-star shooting. So hopefully with Matty Beniers simulating as more of a playmaker, this will be beneficial. The bottom 6 is nothing too impressive. Defense is still atrocious, and goaltending still also unimpressive. So this Seattle team is very top-heavy as always. We've seen them make the postseason with this type of roster before, and hopefully year number 15 will be the same. In year number 15, the Kraken finally make the postseason with a little bit of authority as they win the Pacific Division for the first time in franchise history and finish 9th best in the NHL, finally cracking the top 10 with a 100-point season as they go 47, 29, and 6. Not a career year for Matty Beniers, but good to see some consistency as he once again plays a fully healthy 82-game season and scores 22 goals and 50 assists for a 72-point campaign. He was a +21 and was averaging about 19.5 minutes of ice time per night. And how about this for a postseason run as the Kraken finally make it out of the first round for the first time since 2026, 11 years later. And they go on a tear, sweeping through round number 1, sweeping through round number 2, taking out the Coyotes in round number 3 in 5 games, and then losing ultimately to the Pittsburgh Penguins in 6 games in the Stanley Cup final. Heartbreak for the Kraken, but thankfully it was a good playoff run for a lot of for the forwards at least, as there were many players above a point per game. Matty Beniers was very close to point per game, 19 games, 1 goal, 17 assists, 18 points. Crazy how he still can't seem to score in the postseason, only 1 goal in those 19 games. He was a +5 and was averaging 19 minutes and 14 seconds of ice time per night. So not one of the more used players, as it seems like Dagenet and Wright were those guys up there. 19 goals from Omar Raffel. But Matty Beniers got a little bit of a deep run, hasn't been on one since his rookie season, and now at the age of 34 is an 88 overall. He was an 88 to start the season. I forgot to mention that was mostly, I think, just his skating dropping a little bit because everything else is still the same. His shooting, his puck skills, all that. Headed into the final year of that big extension that he signed with the Kraken. Will Seattle want to keep him on? Likely the captain at this point. Will they be able to run it back for another postseason run? Or will they go back to their typical ways of maybe squeaking into the postseason and having some disappointment? Year number 16, then Matty Beniers has found himself back on the top line in Seattle. Pretty much those same 5 players interchangeable. Beniers, Wright, Yashin, Raffel, and Dagenet. Kent Johnson down in third line center. As you see, the years go by, the AIGM doesn't know how to manage a team, so we have some 70-some overalls in here. Defense, has it gotten any better? Got an 85 in here. Hey, there you go, with everyone else between 75 and 80. And goaltender, 278 overalls. All right, but Matty Beniers is 87 overall at the age of 34, and now listed as a second-line forward with exact top 6 potential. So age trying to catch up to him a little bit. 4.5-star puck skills now, 4.5-star defense. The shooting is still there. The offensive awareness is still there. But this is the final year of that 7-year extension he signed back in the day. The salary has changed over time because the game has to make teams cap compliant and everything. But this is the final year of that 7-year contract that he signed. Will he stay in Seattle to live out his days as a Kraken? Will this last year be the final straw? Let's hope for more good things as the Kraken were able to make the Stanley Cup final in year number 15. Year number 16 was another 100-point season for the Kraken, this time getting them to 7th place in the NHL. A record of 45, 27, and 10 to return to the postseason for the 4th time in the last 5 years. Now here's something you love to see. Matty Beniers goes over a point per game, scoring 15 goals and 69 assists for an 84-point season through 82 games. Another fully healthy season in a reduced role, but it seems to be working very well as he sets a new career high in assists and points by far. He was a +31, all while averaging close to 22 minutes of ice time per night, so maybe not a reduced role. It must have still been a lot of special teams and everything for the 35-year-old. Amazing stuff to see. Wright 109 points, Yashin 104 points with 62 goals. A great season for the Kraken and the first point per game plus season of Matty Beniers' career. In the postseason, it was a repeat of year number 4 as the Kraken swept through round number 1, but then got swept out of round number 2 by the Predators, who went on to lose to the Blues, who would eventually win the 2038 Cup. Beniers played in all 8 games and kept up his point per game pace. 2 goals, 6 assists, and 8 points for the veteran. He was a +5. Players like Wright, I guess, 6 points in 8 games for him. The defense, the goaltending wasn't good enough. They needed that explosive scoring to continue. Only Raffel and Beniers going point per game. Beniers, by the way, also averaging over 22 minutes of ice time per night in the postseason as a 35-year-old who will now find himself out of a contract at 88 overall, back to being listed as a first-line forward, but still with the top 6 potential, which means that his overall will likely drop by the beginning of next season or sometime in the next year. His puck skills are back to 5 stars. His senses, his defense, great to see that, but age is catching up as we see in the acceleration and the speed down to 86 and 87 respectively. What kind of contract could he get in unrestricted free agency? And will Mr. Seattle, the longest serving Kraken on the team and in franchise history, stick with the team? After 16 years with the Kraken, Matty Beniers goes to unrestricted free agency and signs a one-year deal paying him $8.2 million with the Pacific rival Vegas Golden Knights. There's a lot of talent on this team, a lot of young players with X factors. By young, I mean players who are in their mid-20s, some later 20s. It looks like a pretty solid team on paper, more well-rounded than Seattle, but not as much star power. Beniers will be centering the first line with this guy Zane McClement, a playmaker on his left, 83 overall, and Amir Getzlaff, 85 overall playmaker on his right. So kind of like three playmakers on that first line. Not sure if it's going to work out. Defense, not great. Kiwi Haryu's out there, he's great. And 82 overall goaltender between the pipes. So at the age of 35, Matty Beniers is an 88 overall, first line forward, top 6 potential, 5-star puck skills. Don't think much has changed aside from his shooting. For the first time in his career, he has 86 and 85s for the shooting accuracies as opposed to like 84. So as the skating goes down, the shooting goes up. He's doing what he can in his older age, and I'm excited to see what he can do in his first year outside of Seattle. In year number 13, Beniers is first with the Golden Knights. Vegas finished 19th in the NHL with a respectable record of 40, 38, and 4, but the West was just too strong. Yikes! Beniers showed that playing with a cast of talented players is definitely where he thrives because he only scored 8 goals and 51 assists for 59 points in 80 games. Not a career low in points, but a career low in goals by far. 59 points in 80 games, a -1, all while averaging over 22 minutes of ice time per night. So he definitely got that first-line centerman role, which I'm sure he was happy about, but not the greatest support. After a tough season, he drops to an 86 overall, listed as a second-line forward with exact top 6 potential. The puck skills, the shooting, it's all still there, but the skating, the physical, is starting to dwindle away a little bit. At the age of 36, he's headed back to unrestricted free agency to look for another shot at the cup. And by the way, if you're curious, in their first year without Matty Beniers, the Kraken dropped in 7 in round number 1 to the eventual Stanley Cup champion Vancouver Canucks. Year number 18, and Matty Beniers is bringing his talents up north. Now at an 82 overall at the age of 36, he signs the deal that may carry him to retirement. A 2-year deal, paying him $5.33 per season, just over $10.5 million in totality. He has this guy Gogolev, an 87 overall on his left. Edward Sale, a top prospect in 2023 on his right. The team has some decent pieces. This guy's a franchise playmaker who was the first overall pick in 2038, so the Leafs have a little bit of hope. Don't be fooled by the X factors, not too great in the bottom 6, but the defense does have an 84 overall, which seems to be rare in this NHL, and an 89 overall a goaltender between the pipes. So some hope for the Maple Leafs and Matty Beniers at the age of 36, centering that top line with top 9 potential, 4-star puck skills, 4-star of defense, the skating and the physical really taking a big dip this season, but he still has the fundamentals, and as we saw in Vegas, he shouldn't be relied on as the guy, but he can be a great piece in a solid system. Okay, solid season in year number 7 as Matty Beniers and the Toronto Maple Leafs make the postseason with a 7th place finish in the NHL, 98 points and a record of 44, 28, and 10. Not as good as the President's Trophy winning Seattle Kraken's 55 wins, but hey, we'll take it. A very nice season from 37-year-old Matty Beniers, who in 80 games, looks like he got injured for the last 2 games of the season and maybe into the postseason. He scored 18 goals and 49 assists for a 67-point campaign. He was a +10, all while averaging over 22 minutes of ice time per night, so he's still getting it done at the age of 37. Now the question will be, does his injury prevent him from playing in the postseason? I'm not sure how much Beniers played due to a separated shoulder that he suffered at the end of the season, but the Maple Leafs did make it to the conference final where they fell in 5 games to the Ottawa Senators in the Battle of Ontario. They took down the Blue Jackets in 5, the Rangers in 5, but then fell in 5, and the Senators would go on to get swept by the San Jose Sharks. Beniers did not end up playing at all in the postseason, unfortunately. That separated shoulder kept him out. At his age, suffering that kind of injury in the last couple games of the season, really brutal stuff. But I will count it as a playoff berth nonetheless, as the Maple Leafs fall in round number 3. Headed into the second year of his 2-year deal he signed with the Maple Leafs, Matty Beniers is back to an 84 overall now, so a bit of the fountain of youth being found in Toronto. Okay, all right. Listed as a second-line forward with exact top 9 potential. Puck skills, senses, shooting, all well, shooting's dropped off a little bit, and the skating, 80 acceleration, 81 speed, yikes. But at the age of 37, he's coming off of a solid season. He was a big part of a locker room that went to the Eastern Conference Finals, and if he does decide to come back for another season after that separated shoulder, we should hopefully see some more good things. Year number 19, and I'm liking this lineup here in Toronto. Matty Beniers is back for possibly his final season, coming off of a separated shoulder to end his 18th season. He's an 82 overall, and he's third line scoring forward role, bottom six potential, but he's still got the puck skills, he's still got the offensive awareness, 90 defensive awareness, despite the 77 endurance and all that. Forget all that stuff. He has an 81 on his left and 82 on his right. Not the greatest line mates, but the team as a whole, Leo Carlson is here. That franchise player is up to a 90. That guy Gogelev's an 87. Okay, let's do it and run it back, possibly for the last time, with a team that was in the Eastern Conference Final just last season. 2040-41, let's go. Okay, so the Maple Leafs finished second last in the NHL here in year number 19, 31st place, only second last to the Ducks, who had an atrocious season, but 31, 42, and 9 was the record. By the way, another President's Trophy for the Seattle Kraken. Matty Beniers, all things considered, had a solid enough season. The second lowest point total of his career at 14 goals, 39 assists, and 53 points through 80 games. But, still second best on his team. Negative 11 in terms of the plus minus, all while averaging over 18 and a half minutes of ice time per night. Now at the age of 38, he's once again out of a contract and an 81 overall. I wouldn't be surprised if he calls it a career at this overall, but there could be a team interested in taking him on. He's still got the puck skills, the offensive awareness, and all that good stuff, while age is catching up to him. So we'll see what the 2041 offseason has in store. Year number 20, and Matty Beniers is back for more as he and the Maple Leafs find a very tasty agreement in the offseason. He signs a one-year deal, somehow paying him $8.345 million per year. After he's making $5.3 as like an 84 overall, he is now a 79 overall, listed as a depth forward with AHL top 6 potential, but he is centering the second line here in Toronto. Not the greatest lineup. This guy Gogolev should be higher in the lineup. But, yeah, aside from the franchise winger, it's not the greatest lineup in Toronto. Defense, yikes, and goaltending, 85 backed up by an 84. So Toronto Maple Leafs are calling on the veteran Matty Beniers to come back and do it one more time, which is likely his final season due to his overall. The overall is usually the bigger indicator of retirement as opposed to the age. So Matty Beniers in his 20th season, his third with the Leafs. Let's see what happens. In year number 20, the Maple Leafs do a little bit better to finish 25th in the NHL, but still not good enough to make the postseason, as they have a record of 34, 38, and 10 to finish 2041-42. But you know what? It was another respectable season from 39-year-old Matty Beniers, who scored 10 goals and 42 assists for 52 points across a full 82-game season. He was a negative 17, all while averaging still over 18 and a half minutes of ice time per night. He's always been at least at that basement when it comes to ice time. And after 20 years in the NHL, he's still 79 overall, listed as a depth forward with AHL top 6 potential. I'll be very curious to see if a team wants to bring him back on another one-year deal to get him to the age of 40, but 73 endurance, 75 body checking, 73 strength. He still has the puck skills and the awarenesses, but I'll be curious to see what the 2042 offseason has in store for Beniers after 20 years in the league. Year number 21, and Matty Beniers is not ready to leave the NHL or the Toronto Maple Leafs just yet, as he signs another one-year contract with the Leafs, this time paying him $3.87 million. He's a 78 overall, depth forward, AHL top 6 potential, and for the first time in his career, starting outside of the top 6, centering the third line with this guy Koltsov, a grinder on his left, and Beauregard, a playmaker on his right. The Leafs as a whole have some great pieces. Sergei Gonchar Jr. is here, Theo O'Byrne, the franchise winger. The top 6 looks great, but can Matty Beniers do well in a third line role? That's what we'll figure out this season, as he is 39 years of age, about to turn 40, with the 71 endurance, 74 body checking, 72 strength, but he still has the awarenesses, he still has some puck skills, and he can still shoot the puck decently well. Let's hope for a good swan song in what is likely Beniers' final season. In year number 21, Matty Beniers and the Maple Leafs finish atop the Eastern Conference and second best in the NHL with a record of 51, 25, and 6, second only, of course, to the Seattle Kraken. Matty Beniers making his 11th and likely final appearance in the postseason and is healthy headed into the postseason for the first time in 5 years. Beniers was extremely impressive in his reduced role as he played a full 82-game season and scored 24 goals, a new career high, and 33 assists for a 57-point season, his best since his first year with Toronto back in 2040. He was a +9 and was averaging just a second over 15 minutes of ice time per night, a career low, but a very good season nonetheless. Unfortunately, in the postseason, after the Maple Leafs took down the Canadiens in 7 in round number 1, they fell in 6 in round number 2 to the Sabres, who lost to the Hurricanes, who went on to win the 2043 Cup. Once again against the Sharks, who are always finding themselves in the Stanley Cup final. Out of those 13 games, Matty Beniers played 12 of them, registering 2 goals and 2 assists for 4 points. His first postseason games as a Maple Leaf had to go into his career numbers because he's now with the Marlies after the season has ended. And in the postseason, he was averaging just over 13 minutes of ice time per night. At the age of 40, after 21 seasons in the NHL, he's still 78 overall, depth forward, the skating 2.5, the physical 1.5. His skills are still there, but much of everything else is falling apart. He had a great season, regular season-wise, a career high in goals. I wouldn't guarantee that he's done just yet, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he decides to call it a career in the 2043 offseason. And in the 2043 offseason, Matty Beniers does exactly that at the age of 40, calling it a career after he played 1,692 games, scoring 373 goals, 959 assists, and accumulating 1,332 points. He says, "I've had enough." He goes out on a good Maple Leafs team, but unfortunately couldn't get another Stanley Cup after the one that he captured in his rookie season. So let's start breaking down all the numbers quickly that he saw in the regular season. Was always very consistently between 67 and 82 games played, usually 78 to 82 actually, a couple outliers. Of course, his one real-world season in 2021-22, he had those 10 games played with Seattle. But aside from that, always in the high 70s or plus games played. Goals scored, never more than 24. That 1 year in his final season, 24 goals with the Maple Leafs. Aside from that, consistently around the 20-goal mark. Assists, he had as many as 69 in the 2037-38 season. Could usually be counted on somewhere in the low 50s, high 40s. Points-wise, his highest of 84 points was his only point-per-game plus season of his career. Aside from that, usually in the 70s, high 60s, somewhere around there. Not usually a plus player. His best season was a plus 31. His worst, negative 17. Ends his career as a plus 44. And for the points, by the way, his worst full season of points, 45, his sophomore season. After that, usually at least in the 50s. Penalty minutes, 1,130. He had as many as 78 in a single season. Never too many, but he was, he got his fair share. Shots, 3,680. Only cracked 200 once. Was always good for at least 150. Shooting percentage at 10.1%. His best 16, well, if you count a full season, his best was 14.3, and his worst was 5% on Vegas, where he scored 8 goals that 1 year. 55 of his goals were game winners. 69 of them came on the power play. 274 of his points came on the power play as well, with 23 being his best in 2035-36. 7 shorthanded goals, scoring 2 of them. A couple seasons of 2. 7 shorthanded points as well, his best. He had a total of 30 shorthanded points. Average ice time in his career, 20 minutes and 15 seconds. Had as high as 22-12 twice, and as low as 15:01 in his later years with the Maple Leafs there. Played over 34,200 minutes. His biggest season was playing almost 1,800. Face-off wins, over 12,700 of the over 23,400 that he took. A career percentage of 54.28 on the dot. Very solid on the face-offs, as good as 58.44%. He threw over 3,000 hits always good for the mid hundreds. 202 his best on Vegas that one year. 455 blocked shots, 1,048 giveaways, but 1,535 takeaways. A couple seasons like this, 37 to 152, 44 to 123, could have been Frank J. Selke years. I'm sure he got some nominations for the Selke, but never any awards won for Matty Beniers. In the postseason, Beniers goes out with 99 games played. Of course, his one Stanley Cup championship coming in his rookie season when he scored 19 points in 26 games. In the 20 years that followed that, he saw a Stanley Cup final, a conference final, but then a lot of round 1 and 2 exits. Wasn't known for scoring many goals as well, always 1 or 2, if not 8 in the year that they won the Stanley Cup. He had 18 points in 19 games one year at Seattle, but aside from that, 15 goals, 56 assists, 71 points in 99 games, plus 10, 55 penalty minutes, shot 7.6%, 1 goal a game winner, 1 goal a power play goal, 12 power play points, couple shorthanded points, averaging 1940 per night in the postseason. Face-offs at 50.18%, 192 hits, more takeaways than giveaways as well. In terms of franchise records with the Seattle Kraken through his 16 years with the franchise, when he left the team, he was the all-time leader in assists and points, never goals, because I believe Jared McCann always had more, but after, years passed, Shane Wright caught up. I'm sure Matty Beniers was the captain for many years as well, but Shane Wright took the torch and carried it on after he left. Still the franchise leader in penalty minutes at his time of retirement, and not far off in the points categories, but Shane Wright owning all of those franchise records now. In terms of season records, none for Matty Beniers. Rookie records, still had the rookie record for most assists in a year at 33, and single game records, he had a single game record of 5 assists in 1 game in 2024. And before we go to the final screen, we'll look at where these numbers would have put Matty Beniers all time. His 1,692 games played would put him 7th all-time, right behind Joe Thornton and ahead of Zdeno Chara. Of course, not always realistic in EA land, as injuries would have caused a lot more. He did have his fair share of injuries, and the injury slider was where it should be, but he had a pretty good amount of longevity. His 373 goals would put him around 128th all-time, tying him with Thomas Vanek, right behind Trevor Linden and ahead of Eric Lindros. His 959 assists would put him 15th all-time, right behind Doug Gilmour and ahead of Mark Recchi. And his 1,332 points would put him 34th all-time, right behind Mike Gartner and ahead of Pierre Turgeon. So thus concludes the career of Matty Beniers, a pillar on the Seattle Kraken. He ends up playing 16 years with Seattle, technically parts of 17 seasons if you count the 10 games that he played in 2021-22 before coming into the NHL full-time. 1,288 games with the Kraken, 299 goals, 745 assists for 1,044 points. 87 postseason games, 13 goals, 54 assists, 67 points, and a Stanley Cup championship in his rookie season. He then goes to the Vegas Golden Knights for a cup of coffee, 1 year, 80 games, tough numbers, 8 goals, but 51 assists, 59 points. Then proceeds to finish out his career with a 4-year stint in Toronto. 324 games played with the Maple Leafs, 66 goals, 163 assists, and 229 points. Rejuvenating his career a little bit in the later years after he wasn't sure what was happening in that Vegas season. Only 1 postseason berth, technically 2, but only 1 where he played. 12 games, 2 goals, 2 assists, and 4 points for Beniers with the Leafs in the postseason. Through those 1,692 games in his career, his 82-game average was 18 goals and 47 assists, putting up an average of 65 points per 82 games. Not too many honors as he goes out with a Stanley Cup championship, thank you very much, and he also ends his career as the Seattle Kraken's all-time leader in penalty minutes. Didn't end up finishing with the record for assists or points or anything else like that. He did hold them at one point, but at his time of retirement, he no longer held them. 21 seasons, over $170 million. Not too much postseason success, but a very consistent and solid player in the NHL. Wishing him all the best in the real world, as I do believe him to be the Calder Trophy favorite in 2022-23. I think he's going to be even better than this career simulation suggests. So be sure to leave your comments down here on YouTube or over on the Discord server, link in the description. What do you think about this simulation? Do you think it's realistic? Do you think he'll have more honors, less? He'll stick with the Kraken, not so much? Let me know your thoughts on it. And of course, be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the simulation. It takes a long time, but it's a blast. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more franchise mode, career simulations, and much, much more. So be sure to leave a comment with which player's career you want to see simulated next, and then make sure that you're subscribed so that you will not miss out on when it drops. Thank you once again for taking the time to watch, and I look forward to reading your thoughts and seeing you again in the next one.